Who am I? The girls them sugar.
Say no more. Say no more.
Who am I? The girls them sugar.
What's up, man? What's up?
What it do? What it do?
How you living?
You know, man, I'm still do-rag Dylon, you know, because all I do is spit hot fire.
I like it. I like it. So you got a little different setup today. See, last time you was in the corner. See, now you done. Now you
So I
done
was
moved.
cleaning my room, and like I told you, I built a desk, so the desk was just like in the middle of the room, and I was like, all right, this ain't looking good. So I had to kind of put it in a way. So I'm still in that same corner, I just not at an angle. But
and you got the cover today. You say you can sound better, huh?
Yeah, you know, I've been I ain't been sounding my best. You know, you went and got the goddamn $7,000 mic, so I'm just trying to keep up.
Who am I? I just listen. All right. Listen. Now, what's up, man? Appreciate y'all joining us, man. Who Am I podcast. Today we got a little bit of a different episode, so we gonna just kind of react. We're gonna freestyle. We're gonna react to some of the things that we've been seeing over the week since our last pod. We didn't want to have something so structured today. We just kind of wanted to see how we go. So no music today. We are still going to do a positivity shout out. Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So
yeah, we actually talk. Yeah. You can see the level of preparation that we set up.
Oh yeah. I threw out my notes. I had notes. And then after I had text earlier, I was like, you know what? No notes. No notes.
I ain't go that far.
I'm freestyling, bro. I'm off the dome today.
Well,
I'm off the dome. Let's start with the positive stuff though. Like what's good that's been kind of happening this week. Just all like kind of like revolving around like what's going on in America.
I say conversations. There's definitely a lot more conversations being had. I could speak personally. I'll be getting a lot of DMs. I'll be getting a lot of messages. I'll be getting a lot of texts from people I haven't spoken to in years. You know, just asking my opinion on things, asking what do I think, asking like, hey, can you listen to what I gotta think, and do I sound crazy type of thing. So I think if anything, this should have stimulated some good conversations like amongst peer groups, amongst people that don't know each other, and just it's a double-edged sword. Like there are some conversations that aren't really productive, but for me personally, I think the most positive things is the conversations that I've been able to have over this past, week or so.
Yeah, man, I haven't been able to avoid it, right? Like it's been everywhere. Like no matter where I go to work, I gotta talk about it. I come home, I gotta talk about it. I get on the game, I gotta talk about it. So that's a good thing. Like 100%, that's a good thing because I can voice my opinion on what I feel about it, and somebody else can voice their opinion. And if we disagree, then we can debate it, and that's how it's supposed to work. Now, I'm not the problem is I don't want to become the spokesperson for Black people. I'm not that. Who am I? That's the whole thing. Like, who am I? So I do my best. I research. I say all the time, like I got my degree from Google University. Like for real, I do my Googles. I'm top of my class, but that's where I got it. There's real activists, and I'm gonna point y'all in the right direction so y'all can talk to some of them, or y'all can see what they talking about. And I think that they gonna be the ones that lead us into this next phase, and we'll go over that a little bit later for me. But yeah, I like it, but there are wrong ways to have these conversations.
Yeah, I think we need to highlight what it is to have a civil discourse. Like it's cool for you not to agree with everything somebody always says. Like we don't need everybody on the same page all the time. Like I don't think that that's particularly the absolute right way to go. And I think that's kind of like the foundation of what this country is. Like it's a reason why we have a two-party system, or it's not really supposed to be that way, but there is a predominantly two-party system. You can either be a Democrat or a Republican, right? And the goal or the intent of that is just so that you can have one side bring what they think is the best way forward, and you can have another side bring what they think is the best way forward, have them debate that out, have them hash that out, and then come to a compromise in the middle so that everybody from both sides can at least walk away with something. I think that's the intention of what this democracy is built on. But as time goes on, we start to see a growing divide between those two sides, and that need for civil discourse is kind of like we kind of have to have that conversation with people we don't necessarily agree with, or people that we don't necessarily understand, to be able to keep growing and keep going forward.
What I think is crazy is like we can watch the same video as Americans, but see two completely different things. You know what I mean? Like we watch the George Floyd and we see like a murder. right? Just point blank, period. But
Right.
somebody else can watch it and ask the question just right off the bat is like, well, what did he do? And I think that that's where we kind of different, because to me it wouldn't matter what he did. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what he did. No crime that he committed warranted death on the spot. Period. There was nothing that he could have done, right? The only thing that I could imagine for a acceptable reason for something like that to happen was if he was garnishing a firearm. If he's garnishing a firearm at a cop, that's fear for the cop's life. I can rock with that. I can understand the concept behind what happened there. But in this situation, in a lot of situations that we see, I don't understand how we can watch something and get so like differing opinions about it. But that's okay. That's okay, because then we have the conversation, then we debate it, then we talk about it, because there's a right and wrong way to do this. I'm not going to immediately call you a bigot. I'm not going to immediately call you a racist for how you feel. If you don't understand the kneeling, I'm not going to just go and throw your whole record out and we're going to talk about Drew Brees. Like, I understand that you might feel a little bit different than I feel, and we got to debate that and we got to talk about it to get a clear understanding. If we can get common ground, then we can move somewhere. If we can't, then that's cool. Then we can go our separate ways. I understand where you feel. But calling somebody bigot, calling somebody, there's extremists in every type of movement, right? So I've seen a lot of weird stuff going on. I seen a post last week about people. There was like a bunch of white people out there like massaging black people's feet, trying to apologize. I'm like, this is real weird and real temporary. Like, I'm just saying, like, I've seen a lot of things like trying to going to the extra mile to prove you ally. I understand that's cool. I appreciate y'all for that. But don't do that much. Don't go that far and do that temporary stuff. I don't need the temporary stuff. This is a long range game. So if you come out and you just say, hey, I'm going to get $1,000 to the first black person I see, appreciate that, but that's not really going to be helping in the long run. You just want to make yourself feel better for a small time. And black people too. We got to move away from the canceling. All y'all talk about, y'all woke and y'all want to do this. Well, then educate somebody. If you're so woke, take the time to actually talk and have a conversation with somebody. Don't just throw them out to the wayside because they didn't agree with your first point. That's not woke at all. That's not intelligent at all. You just doing the easy route. If you take the time to stop and actually educate somebody, you may change their opinion. Or you don't. You don't know. But as soon as you start calling them a bigot and racist or want to trash them, their business or do something like that, it takes away completely from the conversation. That's not where we need to be. We got the ears of a lot of people right now, right? Like the idea of racism is not being turned away anymore. Like it's getting real. People's eyes are opening, people's ears are opening. The last thing we want to do is just destroy all that work that we put in with just a few things that you operating on your own agenda. Don't operate on your own agenda. This is the time that we need to move together on this.
Yeah, I agree. I think to go back to the first point you said, like when you're saying that people can look at the same thing and get different like reactions from it, I think a lot has to do with like your background and your experience or where you come from, because some people just have those inherent biases and they don't really understand what it's like to be in the position of a George Floyd. And most people probably don't understand what it's like to be that officer. You know what I mean? We gotta, no matter how we all disagree with what happened, I think we all stand unified in the condemnation of those cops that ultimately led to George Floyd losing his life. I think across the board, we can all agree that was a wrong that was happening. That was a clear injustice that happened. And I think the criminal justice system has reflected that with those charges. But I think that, kind of like you were saying, this is the time for conversation. We have to do a good job of communicating, because even in the conversations that I've had, people have said certain things to me, assuming that I would react another way. And then as soon as I didn't react one way, it just opened up a new level of conversation. And it was like, oh, okay, I thought you were just going to say that I'm bigoted. Oh, okay. Normally when I say stuff like that, people just end the conversation, where it's like, as much as we want people to hear us, we have to be able to hear the other side as well. Because again, there are some points that we may be overlooking. There are some criticisms that we may be overlooking. And this is a very nuanced time. It's a very complicated time. It's a very emotional time. And now is the time where we need to kind of get our ego in check, get our emotions in check, to kind of figure out what exactly is going on, because it's so easy to get swooped up in the emotions of it. It's so easy to get swooped up in the temporariness and the moment. But ultimately looking at it from a broad range and saying, okay, what does this mean 5 years from now? What does this mean 20 years from now? What does this mean in the context of the last 60 years? And ultimately trying to put that in perspective is how it's going to take this moment and the power of this moment, because so much is happening right now. So much is happening right now. We need to kind of capitalize on that and catapult from that so that we can keep getting things done and getting the right things done. And like you said, not just being a slave to the moment and getting some lip service and getting some things that are temporary, but how can we implement some institutional change that can actually affect us going forward?
Yeah, because we've been here before. Like, we've been here several times. We've protested peacefully several times. We protested, I would say, unpeacefully several times. We've been here before. Like, what is going to make this difference is how we can move into the next phase of it. Like, we have to move into a next phase of it, and I think that comes with a educated plan by going to our leaders and saying, hey, like, we delivered you what you needed, right? The mass did our job. Like, we did what we had to do. We raised the awareness of this to an all-time high. Like, now is a chance where this is your job to do. All those politicians that we talk about, all those activist leaders, even from people like LeBron James, even people like, sports and athletes and artists and things like that. Like, we brought y'all to the awareness. Like, we went out and we marched, and we brought everybody into this. So now what are we going to do with this? Because eventually we're going to get to the point where we get that powerful leader, we get that person that can actually make change, and we get them in the room and they say, okay, I hear all your pain, I hear all your struggles. What you want me to do? Right? What do you want me to do? And I know it's not, again, Killer Mike said it on First Take, it's not really our job to fix racism. It's not Black people's job to fix racism. But that doesn't mean we're not going to participate in it. That don't mean we're not going to participate in it. So when they turn and they ask, what do you want me to do? We have to have an offer, because that's how you do a negotiation, right? You start with an offer. So this is what we want. We want these changes, these changes, these changes. And I'll go into some of the things that I think might need to be changed a little bit later, but that's kind of how I feel like we need to start moving into, because we can't march forever. We can't be out in the streets march forever. It's just not feasible. It's not a feasible goal. And as far as the looting goes, and I've seen that a lot of slowing down right now. Again, that's operating on your own agenda. That's the things I've been seeing. You're operating on your own agenda. I can understand to a degree, anger, rage, things like that might drive you to do something upsetting. And I know it's not all just, Black Lives Matter activists or anything like that that's out there doing these riotings and things of that nature. But I understand rage for a certain amount of time, but eventually you got to come back to reality that this ain't helping. This ain't the way. I did it for a day. I did it for a day or two. We got to move back to the peaceful side of it. We got to move back to having conversation and a plan, a structured plan on how to move forward. Because again, we can't march forever, and we definitely sure as hell can't ride forever. We're not about to set America on fire. That's just not the move.
Yeah, and I think before you start moving into solutions, we also got to think about what exactly are we fighting? what's the exact goal? And I kind of want to preface what I'm going to say, this isn't to reflect necessarily the George Floyd incident. This isn't to reflect the recent shootings that are still unsolved. This isn't to reflect the Ahmaud Arbery's out there. This isn't to reflect the Breonna Taylor's out there. But we kind of got to start looking at the details of our plans going forward, because it seems to be a lot of broad changes being asked and a lot of big changes and structural changes and overhauls of basically what it is that we stand for as Americans. And we kind of need to look at the numbers to see, okay, what are we doing this for? Saying that the system is systematically racist, okay, that's a good say, but how is it systematically racist? How specifically? What can you point to specifically that we can change, and how are we being affected by it? We talk about police brutality. Okay, what metric are you measuring police brutality by? Is it the media coverage of it? Is it the actual stats of people getting killed by police officers? We really need to start informing ourselves of these type of numbers, because once we start making these huge acts of our elected officials, we need to have something to back it up. And if we're trying to completely defund the police department, then we need to have definitely some data to back that up. If we're trying to shut down this program or take away money from this program, then we need to definitely be informed of the real time effects that's going to have, and not just the moment that we're trying to please at the time. And kind of like what you were saying before, we got to understand it's three things going on right now. You know, you have peaceful protests, you know, people going out there and speaking on like uh their injustices of the system and the systematic oppression of black people, and just this is kind of like the last straw, and just across the world, like not even just in America, across the world, people are having Black Lives Matter protests. People are having protests for in the memory of George Floyd, and that's a beautiful thing that's happening right now. Then we have the riots and looters, you know, and often those kind of get grouped together unnecessarily, but we have to understand that those are two separate things that are happening. You know, they could be, you know, linked together. So it could start off as a protest, and then the looters kind of take over, the rioters kind of take over. And then from that looting, from that rioting, that burn down stores, that burn down police departments, that tear down national monuments, disgrace national monuments, then we have that uprise of police kind of deployment of the National Guard and the riot gear and the rubber bullets coming out. And we got to understand that we have to be able to separate those three things, because when we start to lump all of that in together, you can start to build a false narrative of, oh, we have police officers shooting at peaceful protesters, when actually they're trying to stop, you know, some looters from happening, or actually the peaceful protests, you know, they were actually out there doing electric slide with the National Guard. But then later on that night, you know, after the curfew was enforced, then some drama popped off. So we have to, again, like I was saying, it's a very nuanced issue. It's a very complicated and a very emotional issue, but we got to be able to compartmentalize so that we're not convoluting the argument and taking away some substance from our legitimate points that we're trying to air out.
So let's get into it. Let's react to some of the things, some of the videos that we've seen. And again, we're not getting the whole story. It's not a bunch of context involved in when you're watching something online, right? Like you just don't know exactly what took place before, what took place after, what caused the situation. But I've seen some disturbing stuff. I've seen some old man get his head cracked open. I've seen a biker getting beat with a baton by 3 different cops. I'm not sure what the case was that. I've seen in New York they locked the bridges pretty much, so the protesters really couldn't get out for hours. Don't know what the method was behind that. I've seen people taking bikes, cops taking people bikes and then telling them to get home. I don't understand the concept behind that. And then I've seen people kind of backing these type of behavior, and I don't understand it. To me, I don't understand it for this reason. Let's start with let's go with, this is just kind of one of the most extreme circumstances I've seen, but I'm sure you've seen the old man fall over, hit his head and everything like that. One of the cops tried to, you know, administer some aid. The other cop kind of pulled him away and say, no, you know, don't, not right now. Like we still moving. You know, a lot of them kept walking past and things of that nature. The reason why I feel like that is undefensible is because I don't, if that was somebody for you, if that was you or somebody that you know that you love, your grandpa, your grandma, should he have been out there? That's another question. It's his right to be out there if he wants to be out there. The question is, what reason do you have to push them, right? What reason do you have to harm this person? Now, I know you looked at him and you seen that he was extremely elderly. So you knew a pushing me might result in something different than pushing a 75-year-old man. And the worst came to worst, he cracked his head open. The 2 cops were charged with assault and not fired, but they were put on leave without pay. So I've seen people protesting that. And again, that's one of those things where we watch a video and we see completely different things. I don't understand that reaction. I don't understand protesting that, because that can't happen. That's one of those things that we just can't have happen. You can't harm the people that you sworn to protect. You can't. It's just not. If you are doing that, then you have to go, or you have to be held accountable at the minimum. We have to be able to hold them accountable. The standard is high to be a police officer. We really got to make sure that we keep that standard high and live up to that standard. Like, so if you in there and you see that and you see your brother do something crazy like that, then you need to hold them to the standard. Because I know for sure in the military, shit like that don't fly. You can't go to other countries and just pop people. You can't go to other countries and just hurt people. Like that's I don't care if they're terrorists or whatever the case. You can't just go. There's a whole book of rules basically stating about why you should and when you can and when you can't and things of that nature for the military. We can't go if we do, it's a national incident. And how many times have you seen people go to jail for that? A lot. You see people get held accountable for that. We have to have that same standard here in America. If you commit these type of crimes, well, you should be held accountable for this. That's a crime. You assaulted a man. I don't care if you're a cop or not. You had no reason to do this. And that's it. That's kind of the bottom line for me on that.
I feel you. And I think that ultimately that's what happened. Like they were charged, they were arrested and charged with it. But and again, this is not to condone what happened. I just kind of want to add some context because I don't want this conversation to kind of just go one-sided and we just start like a pile on. So I'm gonna just push back on some of your points just for the sake of conversation. But you said that he had the right to be out there, but what if they were enforcing a curfew?
It didn't look like it was that late for that to be a curfew.
Well, you're saying it don't look like it was that late, but if they put a curfew at 6 o'clock, the sun could still be out. You know, if they put a curfew at 7,
I feel like that's a whole different topic though, because you can argue like a curfew is kind of unconstitutional, but that's nor here or there.
Well, it's a state of emergency because, like I said, like the looting that's happening. You know what I mean? Like that's legit happening. Like national monuments were torn down. Like the Minneapolis, the police department was burned down. You know, like these are legit crimes. Like people were swarming the White House to a point where, you know, they could have, you know, did something. And again, this is not to condemn them. This is not to validate any of the actions, but we have to understand like this is a real deal. When you can't just loot and riot without any type of force back from the government. Like they're still there to protect the people that don't agree with the protest. They're still there to protect the rights and properties of these businesses. So however noble the cause, if the government says this is a state of emergency because so much damage is being done across the city, that is their responsibility to enforce a curfew. And like, again, this is just for the sake of conversation.
Yeah. So how far should that be willing to go though? Because you can't be out here hurting people, bro.
Right. But if you go,
that's not what cops are supposed to do.
If you go up and approach a group of cops,
yeah.
How much of that responsibility is on you? What part of a peaceful protest is that you going up to some cops and provoking them in some way? Again, just for conversation purposes, how much of that is on the individual and how much of that is on the police department?
A lot. I hold self accountability high. Yeah, I would say so. Now, there's a difference between walking up to somebody aggressively and just walking up to somebody, yo. Because we don't know what that old man concept was or what he was trying to accomplish. We don't know anything. We don't know nothing about it. We don't know what the biker that was getting beat, you know, we don't know any context about it. But it's hard for me to understand the context of it, though. Like, I can't understand in what way that would be acceptable. I just don't know.
I think we often look at the response and don't give enough credit of the provoking. Like, it's all for, like, we have the right to protest, we have the right to assemble, and at a certain point, what do we expect of the police officers? We don't know what's been happening for the hours beforehand, what's been going on, what's been said, what's been thrown at these cops, what has been occurring before that. All we see is the reaction. So again, this is not to condone those actions of these officers, because like you said, we need to hold them to a higher standard. I can't hold somebody that's outraged about their treatment or mistreatment in this country. I can't hold them to the same standard of somebody who's been trained to de-escalate situations like this. Again, it's a balanced scale, and one is held to a higher standard for a reason. So again, this is just for the purposes of conversation, but at the same time, we as a nation have to look at how much do you think that we can go about provoking a police response before they actually respond? Because if we're hurling bricks, we're actually going and defacing property, we're tearing down monuments, we're burning down buildings, we're looting stores. They have a responsibility to protect that and to prevent that from happening again. So we may see the instigation of that start to happen, and they may say, you know what, we're forcing a curfew because at this time every day, this when y'all start to loot, this when y'all start to riot. Once y'all get this rowdy, this when the bad stuff starts to happen. So we about to enforce this curfew, and I've seen it in some videos. Hey, y'all need to go home, and people refuse to go home. Y'all need to go home. People refuse to go home. All right. And as you can see in the Buffalo video, they were actually going out in a force to kind of like push people back home. So it's like, we have to take some self-accountability. Don't poke the bear and they get mad when that bear turn around and start to retaliate. Like if you gonna poke that bear, understand that there are some consequences that come with that. And then once you get a response from it, then play the victim again. Like, oh my God. Like, and again, not to say that all of the time that the police response is warranted or necessary or acceptable. It's just, we have to take some type of accountability in that as well.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. And with that, so let's get actually into some other stuff that I've seen over the week. But before that, I do want to say, like, I understand the concept of like this is not an easy job to do. It's not you're pretty much being put on trial throughout all of America right now in the eye of the public. So it's not a good look to be a cop right now. You have to distinguish between what's peaceful, what's not, what can turn into not peaceful. You have to listen to orders that you may not agree with. I understand all that. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. I don't envy their job at all. And I appreciate them for going out there and doing what they do for the most part, but it's still some things that I can't allow, I can't be putting up with. I can't see it and not think that's disgusting, because it to me, it just is. I don't want to see cops beating people. I don't want to see cops harming people, because that's not what they're there to do. They're here to protect. And I understand if you're saying, hey, they are protecting in some way, they're protecting the other side of this, but maybe we need to figure out a different way then. But that's nor here or there. I think we can. I mean, like I said, it's just for sake of argument. So I'm not gonna say we agree or disagree. We just kind of talk.
Because I agree. I agree. The right thing happened in the cases of that police brutality. Yeah, the right thing.
Yeah, because they have. Dog, I don't under. Yeah. They have to be held accountable, dog. Yeah. They can't do that. Like
But also we have to understand, like, okay, the right thing happened in that case. So it's like justice. Yeah. Like boom. Like we have to trust the justice system to work for it. So it's like, all right, that happened. That's wrong. Boom. The right thing happened afterwards. Boom. Cool.
Yeah. Because you got to, like you said last week, you got to be able to count your wins up. You got to be able to stop. You got to stop and count the wins up. Because then if not, now you just push into a different level of, things that you've seen. Like you pushing it way too far. Exactly. Like I seen a video with Kiki Palmer and like the military guy, and he was just trying to tell him like, hey, I have to have this. I got to do this intersection, dog. Like that was real shit. Like I'm gonna lose my job. I'm not here to harm y'all. I'm just here to control this intersection. They're like, control? Well, why you gotta? It's like, listen, I can't move from here. I can't. Like all the way got to the point where, well, that's not good enough for me. And well, now you got to kneel, and it looked crazy, bro. Like everybody liking it is like, yo, that shit look crazy to me, dog. Like the man he being respectful. He trying to do the right thing. He not saying he disagree with y'all. Honestly, I would say that he agree with what y'all do. If I had to just go off of what that video said. But as soon as you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, dog, now shit looking ridiculous. Now it look like you bullying them. Exactly. Like now you look like the bully, bro. Like that's not the move. Young and May, I seen the video with Young and May, bro, walking up in the everybody. Oh, well, she got the person off of the hook for the ticket. It's like, yeah, but you also could have potentially made that a dangerous situation, because the cops was more than like respectful. He wasn't out there trying to harm nobody. All he was saying like, yo. Oh, and everything he did. Oh, now you open up the trunk. He's like, yo, I didn't even open up the trunk. She opened up the trunk to get her wallet. That was her. I didn't touch the trunk. Like now you got 5 people around him yelling. There's only 2 cops. It's like 6 of y'all all over a traffic stop. Like, and you celebrating, you got her off with a warning. Like, I understand that, but you could have also escalated that situation to a point where it never needed to be. It never needed to be. Like you said that in your rules like last week. Like, just be kosher, like be cool with these people, because they on edge too. Like they don't know what's going on. They don't know what you got in the car. Hopefully you don't got nothing that's illegal. But if you do, then you know what time it is. You the one riding around with it. Yeah, like it is what it is. So we got to make sure that we not going to the point. And I think this is kind of what Terry Crews was saying. And I think we're gonna get into that too. Now that's your man, so you really gonna have to defend him. But have you seen it?
You said Ted Cruz?
Terry Crews.
No, I ain't.
I'll put it up. I'll put it up when I edit this. I'll read it to you. I'll pull it up and I'll read it to you though. But yeah, we'll get into that. I think that's kind of what he was trying to say, but he missed the mark, just like Drew Brees. He missed the mark. But so what's your views on that? While I pull this up about like the not going too far and making sure we're not becoming the bullies.
That's my whole point. That's why I always want to get a counter narrative. Like it's not that I don't understand like the popular Black narrative. It's not that I don't agree with the popular Black narrative, but I don't want us to get tunnel vision, because it seems as if it's becoming a power struggle. It's not about equality, it's about power. And it's a reason, and again, this is a lot of our experience is military. So I apologize for anybody that's listening that's not in the military that don't kind of get these references. But America's policy on terrorism is we don't negotiate with terrorists. And it's just you want to operate from a position of strength, because as soon as you start to negotiate with a terrorist, then you weaken your position, and then you may not get the things that you want, and then you're acquiescing the actions of a terrorist. So like if we're going out and saying like, oh, we want police brutality to stop, but we don't want y'all out here messing with peaceful protesters, and the cops like, all right, bet we're not going to do that. And then now that's not enough because they just negotiated. Again, I'm not calling the protesters terrorists or whatever, but they just negotiated with somebody from a position of weakness. And it's like, all right, bet we're not going to do that. Okay, that's not enough. Now I want you to put down your weapons. It's like, all right, I'm going to put down my weapons. Now I want you to kneel. It's like, all right, but now it's no longer, the dynamic is not about us being equal. It's about you gaining control. And as soon as that person starts to go along with it, then it becomes a power trip. And I don't want this cause, as righteous as it is, as justified as it is, as noble and as necessary as it is, to be lost in a few people going on a power trip and completely ruining what it is that's going on right now. And that's why I always want to have a balanced perspective. I always want to see things from both sides. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, but I want to make sure that the goal is what we're worried about and not the power of it, or that, distinction that we're trying to make.
I like it, man. I agree. Like I said, we can't turn into them. Okay, you can't turn into them in the process. But let me read this to you now. So you said you want to see the other side. I'm going to let you see this side real quick. So Terry Crews, who doesn't have a great track record right now when it goes to these type of topics. Like we know, we've talked about this before on the pod. I'm not going to do what I did last time. I'm not going to call him coon. I'm not going to call him nothing crazy. I'm just going to read this. I'm going to let you react to it. Then I'll respond. So defeating white supremacy without white people creates black supremacy. Equality is the truth. Like it or not, we are all in this together. He goes on to say that, hold on. Any black person who calls me a coon or Uncle Tom for promoting equality is a black supremacist, because they have determined who's black and who's not. React.
I think the essence of what he was saying was in the right place, but he just didn't articulate it the best way. He didn't articulate
bro, it. Black supremacy don't exist, bro. Black supremacy. Black supremacy is not a thing.
I think it does, bro. I think it does. I don't think it does consciously or intentionally, but I think it does. I think it's become a counter narrative, because when you push people to the point where they feel constantly oppressed, they're going to model the behavior of their quote unquote oppressor, because they think that's how you're supposed to act in a position of power. And that's what I mean. These power trips of, hey, you're white, you should feel guilty for your ancestors. Like I saw a video of this dude walking up to this white lady and was like, you need to be on your knees, like saying you're sorry for what your people have done. It's like, fam, like what is that? Like what is that? That's nothing but like, I'm trying to assert myself on you, and I'm trying to weaponize guilt to make you feel something and to empower me. And again, I don't think that's the dominant narrative of this movement or black people. Just like I don't think white supremacy is the dominant narrative of white people. I think there are way more white people that don't see like racism as a dominant, like a thing, than there are people that do. I think there are way more black people that don't see themselves as being superior than there are people that are. So it's like, of course, those little pockets of people are going to exist. It's about who we give our attention to. And it gets the most reactions. It gets the most likes. It gets the most traction on social media. It gets the most clicks on the internet once you put a microphone and amplify the message of those different people. But we got to be mindful, like they exist. They do exist. There's no way to eradicate those type of people in a free country. That just is what it is.
Yeah, but Terry Crews deciding who's a black supremacist is just as ironic as people saying like if he's black enough or not. Like,
right, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't think he said. I don't think he
it
articulated.
doesn't
well.
make sense.
That's
Dog.
like
It doesn't
Trina
make
calling all
sense.
them animals.
Trina didn't make sense either. We
Yeah.
gonna get it. We'll get all of it. We definitely gonna talk about Drew Brees here shortly. But it like I know it's tough, right? I know it's tough. We get on here and we have to talk and we have to try not to sound stupid for an hour and a half. And it sound like, like that sound like a plea. But I understand. But if you sit at home and you willing to fix your fingers to type something so ridiculous, in the same breath turn around and type another thing so ridiculous, I don't understand it. We already know he don't have a good track record of this. We know he don't, man. He didn't stick up for Gabrielle Union. Like there's several instances where we can say like, all right,
But it's the
Terry,
thing,
Terry moving kind of crazy.
You attacking his character and not what he's saying though.
I
Like,
got to though.
But that's the problem. Like your thoughts about him are polluting how you're seeing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
but with reason though. That's what I'm saying. But with reason, I have a reason to believe what I believe about Terry Crews because he showed me several times.
Right, but you're not addressing what he actually said. You're just addressing what you feel about him. Now, I'm not saying what you feel about him is wrong, but in this case, you're kind of playing into his hand when you do that because he's saying, and we're gonna talk about this in Drew Brees. Anytime I go against the dominant or the clear black narrative, I'm labeled a coon. I'm labeled a sellout. I'm labeled this, which means that y'all are determining like this is the only way. That's kind of like what Kanye was saying. Like black people only can think like this. That's why Joe Biden was like, if you don't know who to vote for, then you ain't black. That's kind of like the
he must
dominant.
Be a black supremacist.
Hey, bro, he might be the ally. You know,
he might be a black supremacist. Shit, I don't know.
And that's why I think he messed up. Like saying anybody that's calling me a coon or a Tom, Uncle Tom, or a sellout as a black supremacist, that's ridiculous. But I think what he should have said is we need to be able to have an open dialogue with people who have different perspectives. I
agree. Like I tried to give him a plea earlier. Like I said, I think I know what he was trying to say, but boy, did that mark get missed.
Right, but ultimately nobody's perfect, bro. Like you can't just go like, oh, he ain't do this, he ain't do that here. Because if somebody pulled all our mistakes, if we was living under a spotlight, if we was famous, imagine all the mistakes you would have made if you was famous. Imagine all the stuff
on here, and I edit the show.
That's what I'm saying. Like, imagine what it's like living under that microscope, and we gotta give people some room to mess up. We got to give them room to misspeak. We got to give them a space to kind of clear out their thoughts, just like, and then we can kind of use this springboard into Drew Brees and not bully them into thinking what we want them to think. Have a conversation to understand both sides.
And I'll shout out to Tyler Williams. That's everybody, the actor on Everybody Hates Chris. So he actually responded to this, which is funny because Terry plays dad in the show, but that's no here. That's just me being stupid. But it is funny. But he did come out and he said, listen, I'm not trying to call you out. You know that's all love always, but we're rightfully angry right now. I'm fed up with anyone not with our cause wholeheartedly. I don't want to see that injury pointed your way or diverted from the cause. Terry Crews responded, I understand, Tyler. I was not saying black supremacy exists because it doesn't. I'm saying if both black and whites do not continue to work together, bad attitudes and resentment can create a dangerous self-righteousness, and that's all. Godfrey. I'm not sure who Godfrey is, but I think I do. I know he is. He's like an Instagram kind of comedian type of guy. He says, I love you as a friend, brother. I do disagree with you 100%. No such thing as black supremacy. That is a tactic that racist whites use to counteract our rebellion toward their horrific treatment of us. It's called gaslighting. Black pride isn't anti-white.
That's two different things, though.
Yeah, I kind of like that. He said, I agree. I'm not discussing white people here. They're gatekeepers of blackness within our own community who decides who's black and who's not. I have often been called out for not being black enough. How can that be? Now I just feel like he kind of got a problem with what's his depiction in the media. But again, I'm one of those people that say like your depiction of in the media typically is earned by you. So he can not like it, but again, I don't want him speaking out like this and saying what he said doesn't make sense to me. That's just kind of.
But ultimately, that was a productive conversation.
That was
like you had somebody. I said what I said. Yo, I don't agree with you. Hey, maybe you misinterpreted what I said. This is what I meant. Okay, bet we can agree to disagree. It's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think his character should be attacked with expressing himself. Like, he didn't
Nah.
express anything like, yo, I hate the community. I hate what's going on. It's just, yo, this is what I think. This is how I feel. Yo, I don't agree with you. Just like we doing, I don't agree with that and this, that, and the third. Oh, maybe I didn't say that the best way. This is what I'm ultimately trying to say. I don't see nothing wrong with that.
I'm wrong.
I think that's what we need more of.
Yeah, I'm wrong. Yeah, I shouldn't have attacked this character.
You just don't like that, man.
I hate
You
him.
legit don't
I
like
don't hate
that.
him. I don't fucking like him though.
You really don't like
For
that.
several
man.
reasons though. For several reasons, I really don't like Jake.
And I'm not saying you're not unjustified. I'm not
Yeah.
saying you're not unjustified.
I
But you
really
legit don't like
fucking
that. Man. It's very clear.
I ain't got no reason to fuck with Terry Crews, man. He gave me too many reasons not to, man. I try to give him the benefit of the doubt. It ain't time for that no more. I'm sick of the half asses. I don't want the yeah but people. And we're gonna talk about that with Drew Brees a little bit, but I don't
Let's
believe
talk about it now, man. We've been bringing
I don't believe this is him, but I'm sick of the half ass. I'm sick of the black people shouldn't be killed, but also they probably shouldn't be kneeling. Or this is cool, but yeah, they probably shouldn't be. Oh, but maybe they should stop killing each other. Or stop with the half asses. Stop being on the fence. Stop hiding behind the flag and hiding behind this and hiding behind that. Just say what you want to say, because then we can actually have a productive conversation. But as soon as you keep throwing up all these barriers and flags that you don't to help you be void of having a conversation, then we can't have a conversation. So with Drew Brees, my issue with him was not that what he said at all. I disagree personally with what he said, but it wasn't a problem with what he said or when he said it. It's just a problem to me of the apology and how fast it came after. And this is why. Drew Brees been feeling this way for 4 years, right? Because he said the same thing back in 2016. He said the same exact thing. It was probably much verbatim for the same statement. So he's been feeling this way for quite a long time. So now when you say now, and rightfully so, he got backlash for it. I don't think it was he got some, fuck you Drews and some stuff like that. I don't think anybody was like going out and attacking Drew Brees' house, but he got some hateful words, but he got some actually productive words from other stars, other athletes and things of that nature. So he got some backlash, and then within 24 hours, he comes back and he tells me about how he's learned so much in the last 24 hours and his life has been changed and this and that is going on. I don't like that because then, again, I feel like it's disingenuous because I don't believe you at this point having that same view change your mind that quickly. And if you did, that's cool, and I appreciate that. But you probably still feel that same way, but now that the backlash is coming, now you want to apologize. Don't apologize for how you feel. Just say how you feel, and then let's have a conversation about it. Because now I don't know if I'm having this conversation and you just hit me with the yeah, I appreciate, yeah, I agree, yeah, my bad. Is that because you tired of me talking? You tired of the backlash and you want it to end? Or is it because you truly understand? I don't know. I can't tell now. It's hard to understand now because you folding so quickly on your point. And I believe that a lot of Americans feel the same way Drew Brees does on this topic. So if that's the case, it would have been more productive if we would have had a conversation about it to see if we can get other people to understand it. But instead of just apologizing to the backlash, it doesn't really help anybody but you. You know what I mean? It just really don't in my mind. Now I'm not attacking Drew at all because I know what Drew do. Drew got a record of being helpful in his community, a long record, a solid record of him being helpful all the way back to Katrina. Like he's been a great ally for the black community and the community of New Orleans in general. So I'm definitely not out here trying to say Drew Brees is a bigot or a racist or anything like that because I don't believe that at all. I believe actually the contrary. I believe he said how he felt though, and then he folded too quickly into the backlash that he got instead of actually being willing to have a conversation about it. Because now the conversation, like he called Shannon Sharp, had an episode this morning where they talked, and the conversation wasn't about the kneeling or the flag or anything like that. It was basically like, how can I apologize and make it up? I don't really want that conversation from you. That's not the conversation I would want to have with you. I'd want to have a conversation about what you originally said because I feel like that's the part that we need to talk about. But that's just me. Who am I? I got my degree from Google. So
nah. But I think we set the standard for that to be the normal now. Like we don't allow for productive conversation. We don't allow for opposing views. Like all he said was, I don't agree with anybody disrespecting the flag. He didn't say I don't agree with the protests. He didn't say I don't agree with that police aren't out here brutalizing citizens or out here being racist. He never said that. All he said was, I just don't agree with disrespecting the flag because I have a certain sense of pride when it comes to playing the national anthem. All he said was, yo, I'm not cool with that way of protesting. If the season starts back up and we see a growth in that, that's just not me. That's all he said. But from that, the backlash became, yo, you don't understand the movement. Yo, you're not with black people. The backlash was so crazy. And it kind of forced him to do something. It's like, yo, his wife came out and said, like, yo, we got death threats because of this. Like, who would have known? But we can't create this system in which we don't allow for voices to speak back and then condemn them when they actually acquiesce. This is why I'm not calling anybody a terrorist in this. It's just the simplest way I can think of this term of negotiating. Like when we say we don't negotiate with terrorists, it's this principle of you don't submit to the person that you're negotiating with, because again, like you just said, then they lose all respect for you. You don't have any power now. Anything you say or do is not to be trusted. So what validity you did have, you no longer have it. So this, like you said, he should have stood on it in the sense of like, yo, bro, I'm just talking about the flag, bro. Like me personally, I'm not gonna sit up here and kneel for the anthem no more. But look at all his teammates. The backlash was immediate. It was swift. Everybody came at like crazy. So it's like you gotta expect him to be like, yo, my bad. I ain't mean it like that. Yo, I ain't mean it like that. Yo, that's not who I am. Boom, boom, boom. So it's like you can't have it both ways, because the person that came out to support him, that's what I think really was the nail in the coffin. The person that came out to support him, they conduct their business like that all the time. Yo, I said what I said, and I'm gonna stand on it. And you see the type of reaction that they get in our community.
Yeah, you can respect it though.
Nobody respects it. When a president come out and he say what he say, he is not apologizing for nothing. And you see the type of reaction he gets in our community. So anytime you do that, you align yourself with that individual, and then you kind of basically alienate yourself from the black community total. And I think Drew Brees saw that, especially once the president came out and said, hey, bro, I'm with you. I support you, because you kind of see yourself being put in a box, and you start to see the effects of being put in that box. So we can't say that, oh, I want you to just be real, whatever, because as soon as you do that, you get put into a certain box. You know, whether that's fair or unfair, that's just how you're going to be categorized. And as soon as that happens, there is no more conversation. You get labeled, you get that scarlet letter whatsoever, and then you are always that person, and everybody's always going to look at you funny. You'll always be remembered, even though he has years, so much he's done for the city of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Like, I think he won that Man of the Year that he wears, that badge that he wears. Yeah, like he won that because of the continued effort that he puts into that city. So his actions speak louder than that one statement, but you kind of have to play damage control in these times, because once you say something and you align yourself with that certain individual, you kind of get stamped that way, and it ain't no coming back from that. As you can see with Kanye.
It ain't an easy job, but shit, somebody got to do it, man.
That's why I'm trying to get the balanced perspective. That's why I try my best to get the balanced perspective, but I don't want to go full Terry Crews and be like, oh man, you're a black supremacist. But we got to understand that whenever people come to speak against our narrative, that's how they get labeled, and we cancel them off rip. Nobody has ever come back from that unless they totally dissociate from that box that you put them in and go against with that narrative. And I think that's a very, very dangerous way to approach the situation.
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, let's see. So let's break it down. So is it right or wrong what he said? I don't think that there's a right or wrong with it, right? I don't think
his opinion.
Yeah, it's his opinion, and that's how he felt. Was the backlash right or wrong? Let's talk about that. Because I personally think that the mass people are gonna say what they say. The mass people are gonna say what they say. Let's just talk about his teammates, some of the athletes, and some of the artists that talked that responded. The ones that I read did not seem they were attacking his character. I think even LeBron James came out, and his tweet to me was even almost educating him on what the actual thing was, which I think is what people are kind of sick of. Like, okay, if you don't understand now that nobody's here trying to disrespect the flag or the military, then you just don't want to. Because that's kind of how I felt originally when I originally heard the clip. It's like, okay, well, he just don't want to at this point. That was 4 years ago. I know you were sitting in on those conversations. I know you were. because I know your teammates feel completely different from what you feel. So you had to have been sitting here having those conversations. So now in 2020, feeling the same way, well, then that's just how you feel, and you don't want to learn, you don't want to change it, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Like, but again, in 24 hours, man, I can't rock with you just changing completely off of your point and flip flopping, because now it feels like you flip flop too much. Because now there's pictures of you that you when you were kneeling during the national anthem. There's pictures of you doing that. So which one is it, man? Like, are you like why stop flip flopping? Just decide on what you want to decide on. State your opinion, and if you get labeled for it, then you get labeled for it. You know who you are. The people around you know who you are. That might have to be enough sometimes, man. But you can't come out here and we say opinions every week contrary to popular belief. Every week we say something that typically the popular opinion would not agree with. Somebody got to do it, damn it. Everybody can't run from it and be scared of getting labeled or this and that. It's a hard job. Just like let's talk like the third person in your strategy of last week. The third person is the one that has to step in and put their life on the line. It's not an easy job. But damn it, somebody got to do it. It needs to be done. It's important to be done. So if Drew Brees don't want to do that, that's fine. But that's where I really lost respect. I didn't lose respect for what he said. That's when I'm like, all right, man. Like you want to fold like that, then you fold. But that's beyond me.
Yeah, but his argument got taken from him though. Like I think the ultimate responsibility falls on Yahoo Finance for putting that out in such a turbulent time. Like they didn't have to release that statement. Like it was no point to doing that. That them breaking that now did nothing but create this controversy. So ultimately we gotta, again, like I was saying last week, the media has to start to take some responsibility in this divide that they're trying to create. Two, because of that story, the issue then became the protest and what it stood for, rather than Drew Brees, would he participate in that protest? Because all he was saying was that I'm not personally going to take a knee during that protest because I don't believe in disrespecting the flag in that way. His personal beliefs about what he should do when the national anthem is being played, that's all he was saying. Me personally, I pay respect to the flag. I have an overwhelming sense of pride when the national anthem comes. I want to stand. I want to pay my respects. He said nothing about I don't agree with anybody else. He just said, me personally, I have an overwhelming sense of pride when it comes to my family served in the military. I want to pay my respects. I'm not going to do that next season. The media came, dropped that clip, dropped that tidbit, and then the narrative started to be, oh, Drew Brees doesn't agree with these protests. Drew Brees doesn't see the big picture. And that's when the backlash came off of that. The backlash wasn't even to what his original point was. The backlash was to what the protest represented. And they saw that news story is kind of taken away and kind of delegitimizing what was happening in this time frame, which is why I believe Drew Brees was so apologetic, because that wasn't his intention. His intention isn't to take away from the spotlight that's being shined on our community. It was to say, oh, this is just how I feel personally. And for him to stand on that would have validated that counter narrative that the media spun out there for him to say that, oh, Drew Brees doesn't stand with the Black community. Drew Brees doesn't support what's going on right now. He stands on the other side of this change that's happening right now. So I feel like he was kind of put in a lose-lose situation to where if he would have stood on what he said, his message would have got lost in it, and he would have been painted as a person that we all know that he's not. And if he would have flip-flopped, it would have looked like, and even Shannon Sharp said it, like, don't apologize again, because now it's looking like you doing this to kind of acquiesce and try to please us, when really you should be doing what you think is right, whether I agree with it or not. So I think the media kind of put him in a lose-lose situation. You know, just imagine the type of endorsements he would have lost just based on that manipulation. Imagine the death threats his wife said they got. So much would have happened that obviously we can't understand at the ground level, but I think he did what he had to do, you know?
Yeah, he did. And to go back to the point about, you know, like saying what you said and then stand on it, like I can respect it to a point. Let me be clear. Yeah. I can respect it to a point. Like, stand on what you said. Now, if you're completely wrong about a lot of shit, I don't like attacking. I don't like attacking them, man. I really don't. But some of the the coverage of this has been a little bit disgusting for me. The way I view it, at least. But that's nowhere here there. We ain't got to get into that. That's a whole different topic. And I feel like we've talked about enough about what we started out with positivity. We went into like kind of the fuckery, some of the fuckery that we've seen. At least we thought it was, and not really fuckery, but for lack of a better word. Let's talk about some change.
It's so many other words you could have used.
Lack of a better word for me. Lack of a better word for me, man. So let's get into some what we think is going to be changing, because I think we both can agree that we need a formulated plan.
Yeah,
we need a formulated plan. Who we bring that to is depending on where you are, what state, what level we want to bring that to. I think the government has a lot of power in this and the ability to change a lot of things. So let's just talk about. Let's just do it one at a time. So we'll go back and forth. I'll give you some of my ideas of what I think. You give me some of your ideas, and let's go from there. So my first order of business will kind of be to help the police officers and police departments kind of get back on their feet as far as being protectors of the communities. So with that being said, the first thing that I think we have to go is internal affairs. I think by name that doesn't make sense, because what you got is police and cops. Like that it doesn't make sense. I can't have you. It's the same way we kind of do the same thing in the military where we have IG, but then they give it to like a group commander to go ahead and investigate his own somebody he's already commanding. Like, it just doesn't make sense, because you can't tell me that we're not going to have any bias if a lot of these cases they work in the same building as the cops that they're actually investigating. So they see these cops on a daily basis. They work with these cops. Sometimes they are cops in some states because there's no real like solid like laid out plan as to how you can do this. You just know you have to have an internal affairs. So if you have an internal affairs and I am at internal affair and you are a cop and you have a complaint against you, and I go in there and I say, damn, King, what happened, man? Yeah, you know what I mean? We was just out this weekend drinking. Like, what happened? Like, you it's no way I can go have that without any biases. So that's when people are not held accountable, because you got police investigating police. It's not the best way to do it. What I would say is it should be standard. It should be standard throughout the entire, like, everybody. And I'm not big on one plan fits all. I'm really not. Like, if anything, I'm more of a libertarian. I like less like government control and things of that nature. But you can't have people on the same payroll in the same building working with the same people and then tell those people that you have to have a fair fair and just investigation on the people that you work with. Those same people. It doesn't make sense. They're going to have biases. They're not going to invest the way they should. And that's when people are held unaccountable. And that's why you can have 17, 18, however many complaints that you want against you and not have any real punishment against you either. Like, that should not be. There's point systems on our licenses just to drive. We get too many tickets, we're out of there. You can take our license. But for some reason, you have a gun and a badge, you get a certain amount of complaints, and you good. You free. Now, I don't know how that sounds to you, but it sounds crazy to me. So I'll let you see. So.
No, I agree. Having like checks and balances in there is definitely important, just to make sure that justice is served in cases when it kind of gets ambiguous. I agree with that. I just want to say, just going forward again, my plans or my solutions are based in kind of what I see the real problem is, because I don't think that there is a huge problem with the killing of unarmed Black men in America. Now, I do think the media kind of buffs it up, and there is a lot of it, probably more than there needs to be, but I don't think that that's where we'll get the most bang for our buck when it comes to implementing some type of change. Like,
so
to frame
I don't want to interrupt you, because I've been thinking about this. Cause I know we talked about it through the group chat like not too long ago, and I know you say that about killing, but do you not find anything different about the treatment? Because I think the treatment is just as important for people that don't die.
That's what I'm saying. That's what my solutions are based on that.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I want to frame it. I'm not looking at, like, I'm not going to say, oh, we need to look at police should use more tasers and we should like, it's not about addressing the unarmed shootings of the shooting of unarmed Black men. And I want to put this stat out there because a lot of the attention is saying that there's systematic racism because cops are out here killing unarmed Black men, when that narrative I don't think is rooted in anything other than biased media coverage. So what I'm saying is last year in 2019, 14 unarmed black men were shot and killed by police officers. Now, to put that into perspective, 53 million police have 53 million interactions in 2019, or per year they have about 53 million interactions. So out of 53 million interactions, 14 unarmed black men were shot. So that's 0.0000026% of the time that police interacted with somebody last year, an unarmed black man was killed. All right. To put that number into perspective, last year, 20 people in America got struck and killed by lightning. So you had a higher chance of being struck and killed by lightning last year than you did to be killed as an unarmed black man in America. Not to say that it doesn't happen, not to say that that isn't a problem, but to implement and enforce radical change into a system that has a less chance of killing an unarmed black man than it is to have somebody that's struck and killed by lightning is very reckless on our part. So that's why I wanted to frame it to say I want to focus on the overwhelming amount of people that are represented in the criminal justice system that I don't believe should be in the criminal justice system, because I think that's where the real problem is. We are locking up too many people for crimes that I don't think that we should be locking them up for. And we're keeping people in prison for longer than they would be because they're poor, not because they're black. So that's where my changes are. And I think this can be applied to not only black people, but poor people across the board, which will help us in getting more political support once we actually implement these changes. So my first one is to decriminalize drugs. Now, this isn't to make all drugs legal. Like, still, if you are out there with intent to sell and you're out there with a bunch of meth and a bunch of fentanyl and you're trying to sell it, that's still a crime. But if you're somebody addicted to it, because it's decriminalized, you will not be taken to jail for it. You'll be taken to a rehab center. You'll be taken to someone to get medical help, and it'll be treated as a public health crisis rather than a crime. And I think this quote unquote war on drugs has criminalized the highly affected areas, which are the poor community, which are rampant with drug use. And if they're caught with it, people in the higher wage environments, they have a lot more money to fight those cases and actually afford to put themselves in rehab. But if you go to a poor community and they're addicted to drugs, they're treated like criminals. And then that creates a cycle that keeps them in the system and keeps perpetuating that cycle that kind of puts them to the bottom of our economy and of our society. So if we start to decriminalize drugs and start to look at people that are caught with it and are using it as a public health crisis instead of being treated like criminals, I think that that's one way we can kind of take people out of the criminal justice system that don't necessarily need to be there.
I like that one. Do you think that there should be a certain amount of times that you'll put up for this, though? So if I continue to take you back to rehab several times, is there any sort of punishment at that point? If you continue to get out of rehab and you continue to relapse? I'm not saying this right. I'm just asking the question.
I don't think so, because I think that should be going into your rehab plan. Like, if it just seems like every time I'm coming in and I'm picking you up and you addicted to drugs, then maybe the rehab isn't working. So maybe that needs to be looked at into, hey, that might be a medical position that needs to be thought about. But if we put them in jail, what is that really going to do? Putting them, you're giving them a record. Now you're putting them a brand on them. So when they get out, now they may not be able to find a job. If you put them in rehab and you fund this, you take some of that money that you're using to fund these prisons, you put it into a rehab center, and then you're actually working towards getting them back on their feet and rehabilitating them, maybe we won't have that problem. I'm not saying it's a perfect plan, but if we start to invest in our community rather than taking and invest in the prison system, maybe we might see some differences.
Like that. Okay, so my next thing, again, I'm kind of addressing just the police side of it at this point, but my next kind of point is I think that over policing communities, especially poor ones, is actually turning into a negative effect than it should be. It's made to be a positive thing to have more cops into this poor area, because poor areas, and this is statistically based, actually commit more crimes than a wealthy community. So it makes sense to have more cops in that community in theory, but in application of it, it's not going well. And there's a lot of statistics that goes behind that will show you, like, after years of over policing, these these communities are actually committing more crimes because they're getting caught. They're just getting caught more, right? They're getting arrested more. They're getting harassed more. Things of that nature is happening because there's so many cops in this area. And I understand that allocating that much power to a community would ideally stop that, but I don't think it's actually working in its favor. And the reason being is because, like you said, we lack a community in ourselves, right? We don't have Black people policing Black people. We don't have allies policing allies. We got people that come from a completely different area. A lot of times, some completely different states. Sometimes with cops and things of that nature, and they coming into these neighborhoods that they don't even they just don't really talk to these people. They don't really communicate with these people. They don't feel like those people are human beings like they are. Like they're just different. They don't know anything about them. They don't know where they came from. They don't know their story. So when you do run into somebody and you say, "Hey man, I know I had to get you last time. I gave you a ticket. Like, this time I'm gonna be easy on you. Like I'm gonna be easy on you. It's cool." Or maybe the first time you say, "Hey, I'm gonna let you off with a warning. I don't want to see you out here again. I don't want to see you doing this again. I want you to do better for yourself." When you had that type of relationship with somebody, like you talked about last week with we need more Black people in the judicial system. When you had this type of conversation and these type of relationship with these people, it works better. It's a better outcome for everybody. Because then when I pull over and I see some lights, I'm like, damn, I got some lights behind me. But then I see King come out like, oh shit, it's King. That don't mean I'm expecting a day off. I should still be lectured as if I was doing something wrong, because at the end of the day, if you pull me over, chances is I might have been doing something wrong. But so I'm not asking for you to say like more Black people just to get more people to get off. I'm saying more people so you can actually have that community, that relationship where it feels like when a cop comes up to you, they feel like they're protecting you and not coming to convict you every time. Because that's how I think it feels right now. It feels like a cop is out there just to kind of get me. Like I don't want to feel like a cop's trying to get me. They should be out here to protect me. So maybe over policing isn't a great idea.
I like that. I had a whole section for that, but we running pretty long. So
yeah, we running long. So
but,
go do you think? No,
I think that to kind of build on the point I had before, I think we need to eliminate the cash bail system, because again, a lot of people that are in jail, they're in jail, especially when it comes to pretrial, they stay in jail once they're arrested because they can't afford to bail themselves out. So again, we have people on these petty crimes, and like you said, like that over policing, and we have officers operating on that. It's called a broken window theory. So basically, you crack down on those petty crimes to kind of make example of those low level workers, so that the people higher up kind of you deter them away. So what happens is you crack down on these drug users, you crack down on these petty crimes, and then people don't have enough money to bail themselves out, and they're stuck in jail until their trial. And what studies have shown is the longer somebody is stuck in jail before they go see a judge or before they get their plea offering, the more likely they are to accept a plea that doesn't really compensate or kind of cooperate with what they're being accused of. And sometimes the person isn't even guilty of what they're actually being accused of, but because they just want to get out of jail as soon as possible, they're willing to take that plea deal. I think the most significant example we have of that is Khalif Browder, who was accused of stealing a backpack, and his bail was $3,000, and he couldn't afford to pay his bail. So he was in jail for 3 years until ultimately he was freed, and it showed that he didn't steal the backpack, but because of the trauma that he faced in jail, he ended up taking his life. So if we have a system that kind of treats it as if like they're on parole, to where it's okay, until your next court date, we're going to have you check in with the officer. We're going to have to actually establish some type of cell phone communication. You'll have to, routinely check in to make sure that you're not a flight risk, instead of just rewarding people that can bail themselves out and punishing people who can't. We start to look at some of the economic disparities in our criminal justice system, as opposed to some of the racial ones that we often see. So if we can eliminate cash bail and kind of replace it with a kind of risk matrix to see who is at risk and who can we actually let go, and establish a system sort of like parole, we can kind of get people out of jail, and kind of that will affect them being able to fight their case or not.
I like that a lot, actually. It makes sense. And I think that's kind of what we need. Everything kind of feels so complicated when you look at the judicial system. Like you just look at it and you just reading, and I'm like, why does it have to be this hard? Like, if the goal of the judicial system is to just achieve justice, make sure justice is achieved, then why do we have to cross so many barriers in order to get that justice? It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it's making sense to me. So I like that one. It makes sense. But I'll leave mine at this. And this is kind of, again, it's just a plan for me. I don't think that I'm the perfect person to do this, right? I don't have enough knowledge in order to do this, but I do know people that are, right? And I think that now is the time that we need to start handing off the baton to those people like the Atlanta mayor, like Tamika Mallory, Killer Mike, even LeBron James to some degree, like people like these that can actually get something changed. Angela Rye, excuse me, that's one of the ones that I really want to go ahead and add in there. But some people like that, because they're the ones that can make sure that our thoughts, our decisions that we want to make happen can get done. They're the ones that I feel like that can actually formulate that into a plan that other politicians can actually understand, and then make sure that it sounds good for both sides and it works. Because we can't just go and say, hey, we want equality for all. We can't just go and say, hey, we got to have people stop killing cops. Cops stop killing black people. We can't go in there with these widespread thoughts about what we want done and not have any sort of like case by case basis, like theories that we want to actually happen. Because if we do that, then it just doesn't make sense. We might be back into square one. We have to have somebody that speaks for us. We need, like I said, we talked about last week, we need leaders. We need leaders to step up right now. And I think now is the time where we need to go into what I would consider a phase 2. Like we got to phase 1. We raised up the awareness. We got it to an all-time high. Everybody here is listening. We got people listening. Okay, now phase 2 is, what do we do with that information? This might be the longest phase for all I know. I don't know for exactly. But it's not a slow game. It's a long game, but we need somebody to go in there and gather all those thoughts of the black community and say, hey, this is what we need in our cities. This is what we need in our states. This is what we need in the United States. Like, we need this stuff to happen because it will protect us from these things to ever happen again. And so we won't have to keep having these conversations. And that might be from anywhere you look into America. It doesn't have to just be police brutality. I think we need somebody to actually look at the justice system as a whole and say, like, hey, these are the things that I've noticed that don't seem right. Why does person A go to jail for a certain amount of time and person B went to jail for a different amount of time? Like, why is that? That's the thing. Like, let's not just attack it, but ask why. Like, let's actually talk to these judges and see, why is this happening? What was your thought process when you came across this? And if it sounds like something faulty, then we can address it then. But we should be trying to figure out the reasons of why is this happening? Like, why can't we stop doing this? And then we can go ahead and discuss the way to kind of remedy it, if you will. So I think that this step is where we need the leaders, the ones that I just mentioned, to go ahead and take control of this and go on about it and make sure we get this thing moving along from a different direction. Because again, we can't march forever. People cannot be out here protesting it forever. We can't post back black boxes on our Instagram forever. Those are the easy parts. Those are the things those are easy to get done. We need people to go in there and actually have a voice and gather all those thoughts together and make it tough. Make those tough decisions, have those tough talks with people that actually have the power to change these things.
Yeah. Excuse me. I agree, and I kind of want to build on what you said. So I don't want you to take this as a dig at your point. You know what I mean? But it's kind of along the same line. Mm. So I think with those people, they need to go to the already established powers of the black community. So we do have the NAACP. We do have the Congressional Black Caucus. And I think we need to empower and speak to those individuals, because just today, I believe the Congressional Black Caucus put together a Justice and Policing Act. And that will call for prohibiting federal, state, and local law enforcement from racial, religious, and discriminatory profiling. It will ban chokeholds and cardiac holds with no-knock warrants. It will the use of a dashboard camera and body cameras for federal officers. So, like, these are the people in the position that can actually create the change that we want to see. So that Congressional Black Caucus, we need to be speaking to them, because they are actually elected officials that are supposed to be speaking for us at that federal level. So a lot of our culture and a lot of our community is based around celebrity. And that's that's kind of like the driving force and the power of the black community. But I think we need to kind of bridge that gap between the people who have the stage and the people who have the power. and kind of make sure that the people who have the stage and the people that have the power are on the same accord, are actually speaking and hearing and making decisions that reflect the opinions of the people, so that we are actually making productive change. Because like I was saying before, with my two things with decriminalizing drugs and ending cash bail systems, that has to be done through Congress. Like somebody has to draft up that bill that has to be pushed on, debated, voted on, and ultimately the president has to sign it. As much as I want Killer Mike to help out with that, it's only so much he can do. As much as I want Angela Rye to help out with that, and she might be able to say it in a way that I can't articulate it in. Tamika Mallory, they might be able to say it best. We need somebody that's actually going to put that in a bill and get that routed through Congress so that the president can sign it, so that it then can become law. So we need to focus in on the right leaders, like what you said, but we also need to bridge the gap between the established leaders that can actually do something to make change. And I think NAACP, Congressional Black Caucus, those are some of the people that we need to look at, hold accountable. Do we have the right people in there that will do something that's going to reflect what we actually want in our community?
I agree 100%, because that feels like they've been recovering from the whole escapade they had not too long ago. I ain't gonna speak on it, but they've been covering for a certain amount of time. But yeah, I would agree. Now is when we need the most.
Are you talking about Rachel Dolezal?
Yeah, yeah.
See what we do to our
yeah.
See how we treat our allies, bro.
Bro, not a good look. But yeah, all right. So I want to get into again, we going long, so I want to get into my positivity shout out real quick. So my positivity shout out goes to Chief Wright and General Goldfein. That's the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and the command chief of the Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, excuse me. But yeah, I want to get into them because they actually came out. They had a town hall meeting. They also had like a short clip of a 6-minute video, and basically talking about, you know, the differences in between the Air Force and America and why we are not pretty much above what's going on in America. Like racism still exists. They came out and gave some really tough statistics about the Air Force and how racism, systemic racism actually does exist in the Air Force. And I know that's tough to do, especially from being in that position. Because they are the highest ranking people in the Air Force. So I understand that it was tough for them to actually come out and say that, and to say like, hey, we're wrong for this. Like, this is not right. Call it out how it is, because a lot of times in the military, it's kind of like a shut up and color thing. Like, you don't really get to speak on the politics. We kind of live outside of it. We don't really get to talk about it a lot. So for them to actually come out and say, hey, like, not only do I think that it's important that we address it, I think it's important on you, if you're listening to this, on every single level, to have these conversations, because it does exist. It's the elephant in the room. It's been the elephant in the room for a long time. And now is not the time to actually just try to move around it and move outside of it and things of that nature. Just address it head on, like have a conversation about it. Because if you don't, then it's going to continue we're going to have to continue to try this every few years. It seems like it's when these things just boil over. Everybody talks about it for a little bit. Some people don't. And then we have to repeat. We will have to repeat the whole thing over and again. So I think it's important for them to actually step out. I shout them out for that, because it trickled down, and it trickled down really fast. Like that next day we had our wing commander come in, and they had a long conversation, and I had a long conversation with my class. And so shout out to my leadership for actually, you know, taking that message and running with it instead of just listening to it and throwing it away. But I do want to, again, appreciate them for that, for coming out, saying something that was hard for them to say, and then encouraging everybody else to have that same conversation. So shout out to Chief Wright and General Goldfein.
Yeah, that's big, bro. That actually broke like where I get my hip hop news from. That was like a story on there, and it's like, yo, the Air Force is coming out talking about it. And like you said, we kind of have to walk a thin line when we talk about issues like this, just because we don't want to, like, hey, we got certain rules that we got to play by, and we can't speak on certain things. So
it's the first time I've seen somebody at that high of a level, like, say, like, hey, we about to talk about this.
Yeah, and it gives validity to the issue. Like, all right, it's okay. Like, it's okay if you want to talk about this. It's okay if you want to speak on it. Like, we're not going to hold that back. So I think that's well deserved.
Absolutely.
I want to highlight, and I just had her name. Stand by. All right. So I wanted to highlight Mayor and if I'm saying this right, it's my brain, it's not my heart. Muriel Bowser. All right, I want to highlight the Mayor Bowser from DC. So I'm gonna keep it short and quick. She basically took advantage of the opportunity, and she was the one that approved the huge Black Lives Matter being painted in the streets of DC leading up to the White House, and actually renaming that plaza that's around that White House to Black Lives Matter Plaza. So this moment again is so big, it's so huge, it's becoming an international movement. And I think that, kind of like what you were saying with Chief Wright and General Goldfein, when you have certain people speak up to it and give validity to the conversation, it only adds to it. And I think uh, it enforces the need for real change to occur. So when you have the mayor of DC to kind of stand behind this movement, a Black woman, I may add, to actually approve, we're gonna paint Black Lives Matter into the street. So when you look on Google Maps and you actually see the road leading up to the White House, you actually see in bold yellow print Black Lives Matter, and that having that tag out there that says Black Lives Matter Plaza just shows you how serious of a movement this is, how serious of a time that we're living in, and how real our voices can be heard and what change can come from it. So I think that that's just a very small step that we can take, and that just shows that we have the ear of people that can actually enact change. So by doing so, we need to make sure that we're spreading the right message and we take advantage of this opportunity. And I think that Mayor Bowser actually kind of put her money where her mouth is and showed like, hey, if y'all need something, I'm here. If y'all want to be heard, trust me, I'm gonna make sure that we being heard. So we actually should encourage and hold our own elected officials accountable and make sure that we come to them with a plan, like we've been talking about this whole episode. So shout out to her.
Nah, that's real shit. That's real shit. That's definitely like walking with you talking. That was real. I was shocked. I was actually kind of shocked about it. Like I was thinking like, yeah, this can't be for real. Nah, that shit is real. she did her thing with that one. She put on with that one. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up. We appreciate you listening. Again, this was a different type of podcast. We just wanted to have a conversation, agree on some points, disagree on some points, come to a conclusion on some of those things. I know we didn't get to every part of our goal, but what I would urge you to do, like just kind of leading out of this, is make sure you have that last part about a plan, right? Make sure you have that conversation. Don't just talk about the pain and the suffering and the hurt and all of that, because that's just a never-ending circle. We know, like we understand, and a lot of people do understand. Get to that common ground in y'all conversations that y'all having, and then get to a solutions of them. Make sure you get to the solution, because that's the most important part. That's the part we need to start moving into. Get to the solutions of them. But again, thank you for listening. This is the Who Am I podcast. You can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Anchor app. If you want to leave a message for us to play on the actual podcast, you can leave that at the Anchor app. And again, that's at the Who Am I podcast on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at the Who Am I podcast. We also have a new YouTube. We got about 4 episodes on there now. So you go check that out. That's at the Who Am I podcast as well. So we're on all streaming services. We appreciate all the support we've been getting lately from y'all. So thanks for that. And like I said, we only getting better, and we're going to try to continue to do so.
Yeah, no.
What I do?
Make sure y'all check on Rachel Dolezal, man. I'm worried about her.
She ain't doing right now.
Check on your allies, man.
You got to check on them, bro.
See what her Twitter feed looking like in these times.
Bro, I heard Twitter.
I'm very interested to see what her Twitter feed looking like.
What did she do now?
If she's still supporting the movement after being publicly ousted,
we need to put her back on. We need to put her back on.
She can come back to the cookout.
Yeah, we need to put her back on immediately. Like, we need to put her back on, bro. Because that is, bro. But listen, bro, it's good, man. Listen, we becoming that mysterious podcast I was talking to you about her. Like how I'm about to come on next episode. I'm wearing shades the whole time and a hoodie. The whole time.
You gonna be sweating.
I'm
just sweat. Like, what is wrong with you?
Look, I had a fall going.
You hear me? That's why I keep drinking so much water. Dog, I'm hot.
No, I'm hot as shit, bro. I swear to God, because you know my foot fucked up. So I've been hopping around the house. So I was trying to get my whole setup going. I ended up getting hot as shit. So right when I was about to text you, I was like, Yeah, it's about to be another 20 minutes. Let me stop sweating because I was cooking it, dog. Cooking, dog. I was like, damn, I'm too hot.
I'm cooking down because I don't want my AC it cut on and off. I want it just to be in the background, like, So, brother,
Oh shit, bro.
I'm down in this feed. I'm
Dog,
down in this
bro,
water.
the
dog.
water been hitting different lately, bro.
Oh,
Hey, bro, but I like, you know what I like the most, bro? I like the people that's challenging our points on this.
yeah.
I appreciate y'all the most. I know we still
That's what
going
we
along
need,
now,
man.
but yeah,
That's what we
but
need.
challenge our points. Because again, our whole thing is, who am I? You might tell me something. I might have to come on here and recant it and say like, yo, I misspoke. Like, here's the actual truth of it. Like, or you might sound ridiculous and I might flame you, but you know, who am I?
The whole thing about it is, like, what conversation is, the truth can withstand criticism. Like, we not up here just trying to like echo each other's thoughts and just, okay, this is the narrative, we want you to agree with this. If you can hold it up to criticism and it still hold true, then that's the truth. But if you start to challenge it and you start to poke holes in it, then we need to reevaluate, okay, well, maybe I wasn't seeing it all the way through. So it's like, that's the whole point of having these conversations, so that we can expose you to, you know, you can criticize, you can say I disagree, but in a civil way, to where, as though, if we disagree with what you're saying, be able to have that civil discourse, and then ultimately, like I was saying in the beginning, come together. I take the best of your argument, you can take the best of my argument, and then we grow from there and then take it to a new level.
Sure.
I'm on a new level.
All right.
I'm on a new level.
All right. I'll let you, bro. I gotta go. You gotta go ice his foot, man. Gotta go.
All
ice
right,
that.
bro.
All right, I'll let you.
All right, man.
Who am I? The girls them sugar.